For most of the past year, Seward Park has been embroiled in the question as to whether or not to sell air rights. A developer presented a proposal, our board negotiated that into a deal and worked to promote that deal within the community. And then, in mid-June, shareholders voted to reject that deal. Well, this didn't sit well with some of our neighbors, and they set out to establish a petition to vote on that same deal again. But before the second vote could come to pass, the developer stepped out to say, "Too bad, so sad, but we're going to go ahead and build anyway, using the development rights we already have." So it's over. There's no deal, right? There's nothing to see here. Just move along. Well, not so fast. You see, the developer announced plans to build a tower on just one of the lots that were in play. This means that they may one day come back to us to acquire air rights pertaining to the other lot. And more importantly, Seward Park has buildings, pieces of property, undeveloped space, and air rights. Do we just want to keep it just as it is? Do we ever want to do anything with any part of it? It seems to me we can learn a lot from what we just went through, and this can inform the future of our co-op and of our neighborhood at large. To set this up, keep in mind that our co-op consists of about 1,600 residential apartments distributed among 4 residential buildings. We also have several commercial buildings. Our property is spread across 3 city blocks. Our co-op was built in the late 1950s, and initially there were plans to build additional buildings beyond what we have. Those buildings never materialized, and as a result we have unused development capacity or air rights. We could use those air rights to build something for ourselves. Alternatively, in New York City, there's an option to sell air rights if there's an adjacent property that wants to buy them in order to build something larger than they'd ordinarily be permitted to build. It turns out there is such a property right here, and the owner of these 3 lots sought to purchase air rights from us. It's important to note that the middle lot here is the Bialystoker Nursing Home, which is a landmarked building. This means that this building can't be further developed. Any new development would pertain only to the lots on either side of it. So this is the deal they proposed. The developer would give us $54 million cash for 165,000 square feet of air. Sounds like a no-brainer, right? To support their proposal, the developer conducted meetings, produced models, and shared a wide variety of renderings. In this rendering here, you see their as-of-right plan. What they would do if we didn't sell them any air rights would consist of 2 large towers flanking the nursing home. Alternatively, with our air rights, they would build 2 much larger towers flanking the nursing home. The implication of this was clear. We're going to build 2 towers anyway. This is a one-time deal. The only question is whether or not you want to cash in on it. I looked at these renderings and had a hard time wrapping my head around them. After all, I'm not a developer. Aside from what these buildings looked like, how could I better understand what 165,000 square feet of air rights really represents? In my attempt to understand this, I turned to New York City tax and zoning sites, which provide comprehensive information on all New York City property. I don't want to go deep in the weeds here, but I will get wonky for this one slide to summarize the kind of analysis I did so you can better appreciate the conclusions I drew from it. For any piece of property in New York City, you can look up its area and what zone it's in, and based on what zone it's in, you can determine its floor area ratio, or FAR, which indicates how much construction is possible on that property. The development potential of any lot is obtained by multiplying its area by its FAR. This slide shows the developer's corner property. It's zoned as Residential 8, shown as R8, for which the FAR is 6.02. We see the area of this lot is about 6,600 square feet, giving it a total development capacity of just over 40,000 square feet. I conducted such calculations for all 3 of the developer's lots, as well as for all property owned by Seward Park, in order to get a better perspective of all facets of this deal. I came to some striking conclusions. First, I discovered that the combined as-of-right development potential of the 2 lots flanking the Bialystoker nursing home amount to just over 70,000 square feet. If you add in our 165,000 square feet, that comes out to 233,000 square feet. This is more than a factor of 3. This led me to realize that the developer's desire to buy air rights wasn't a by-the-way add-on to a project they already wanted to pursue. Their entire business plan must have been tied to the hope of getting air rights from us. They most likely had our air rights in sight when they purchased the property in the first place. Even with this perspective, I was still confounded by the numbers. What do 71,000 square feet or 233,000 square feet really represent in layman's terms? For this, I consulted with a friend who's an architect to establish guesstimates of what sort of distribution a residential building might have in terms of studio, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom apartments, and reasonable approximations of the square feet that might be allocated to each. This led me to estimate that the as-of-right plan would yield 62 residential units. With our air rights, as you'd expect, that would more than triple. Just 62 apartments. That surprised me. To build 62 apartments, they were going to design 2 buildings, get 2 sets of permits, hire 2 construction crews, get 2 sets of equipment, and then the material and labor to construct 2 entire buildings. It just seemed like a whole lot of work, and I wonder if there might be a reason that the developer couldn't make use of all their development capacity on just one of the lots. I understood that buildings need to be set back from the street at various points in order to preserve what's called the sky exposure plane. Perhaps, I reasoned, as the building grew taller, the setback would be so extreme that it wouldn't be practical or even possible to build further. To explore this, I consulted with a neighbor who's an architect to examine whether all 70,000 square feet of as-of-right development potential could be successfully exploited on either lot. The short answer, yes, they can. There's no zoning reason that the developer would need to construct 2 buildings. Then I reflected on the business perspective. Clearly, the developer bought the property to make money. Yet here they were proposing a plan that would cost nearly twice as much to build. And building 2 separate medium-sized buildings couldn't be as tall as one single building. And everyone knows that people pay top dollar for high apartments with views. Why would the developer pursue a plan that didn't set them up to reap the reward? And as I mentioned, I believe that our air rights factored into the developer's decision to buy the property in the first place. Why would they shoot themselves in the foot by building 2 buildings rather than just one, with the hope that they can buy our air rights at some point in the future? These considerations led me to the following conclusions. They're probably not going to build 2 buildings anyway. This is probably not a one-time deal. Apparently, the developer came to the same conclusion. Our board reported that back in December 2016, the developer announced an as-of-right plan consisting of just one single tower. However, shortly after that, the developer recanted and expressed their intent to build 2 buildings even if our sale didn't take place. When you think about it, it makes sense for them to have said this. After all, it's a much more effective sales pitch to say it was just a one-time opportunity to cash in on an inevitable outcome. Far more effective than saying, if you don't sell now, we'll build just 1 building and maybe we can make another deal at a later date. Back in June, when the time came to vote on this deal, our community voted no. The vote required 66.7% to pass, but achieved just 56.2%. Then, in mid-October, the developer announced plans to build a single tower on the middle lot, thereby laying to rest the hope held by some to re-vote on the issue. Why did we reject the deal? While the community had many meetings to discuss all facets of the deal, ultimately there were some points that were never resolved. One pertained to open space. Zoning regulations stipulate that developers need to allocate some proportion of the area of any project to open space for free circulation by residents. In order to accommodate this, there was a risk that residents of the new development would be granted access to the Seward Park courtyard. There were provisions for us to be paid for such access, but many shareholders were vehemently opposed to the idea of granting any access whatsoever, and it was troublesome that this was not known at the time we were casting our votes. Furthermore, there was never any consideration of adversely affected shareholders. There'd be great big buildings erected facing many apartments, thereby casting people into shadow, affecting their quality of life, and possibly reducing their property value. There was never any consideration of what to do about this. We were told that all shareholders are in the same class and that there's no legal way to treat individual shareholders differently from all others. However, our board could have stepped up to broker conversations between the developer and affected shareholders to see if some kind of arrangement could be made between them. And importantly, this proposed deal was shaped almost wholly by the developer. Sure, our board of directors negotiated the dollar values, but ultimately it was the number of square feet the developer wanted to buy. We never stepped in to say that we wanted to limit construction to a certain height, either based on specific criteria or to achieve a specific financial goal. We never considered selling the driveway behind the nursing home. Basically, we responded to what the developer wanted to do. The deal in no way reflected what we wanted to see in our community. Another factor was the distrust that was welling up in the community. As I mentioned, there were already reasons to doubt the developer's claim that they were going to build 2 buildings anyway, doubt that this was indeed a one-time deal. But beyond that, it was disturbing how our board relentlessly promoted the deal. I understand that our board was unanimous, from a very conservative and strictly financial point of view, that our financial picture would be massively improved if we were to get the $54 million from the sale. But the financial point of view was just a part of the picture. There were concerns about shadows, obstructed views, property value, neighborhood crowding, security of our courtyard, and so on. Such concerns were expressed by many shareholders, and at times, these shareholders reached out to the board asking for their views to be published, but they weren't. Instead, our board continued to publish a host of reports and letters uniformly promoting the sale, and they posted ominous fear signs in our lobbies, warning that our financial position, which was reported to be robust the year before, was suddenly dismal, suggesting that approving this deal was essential in order to stave off severe financial distress. So, where are we now? Well, 56.2% is not negligible. There is some interest in some sort of deal. And I personally believe that someday we'll have another chance to collaborate with this developer to consider the sale of air rights pertaining to the corner lot. And aside from that possibility, we still have lots of property and we have lots of air rights. However, we've seen loud and clear that we have a very divided and distrustful community. We've seen explicit and often hostile distrust expressed towards developers, towards the board, and towards every party who has stepped up to promote ideas. Whether or not the question of selling air rights to this developer ever comes up again, we do have a lot of property, building, and air rights. This kind of issue will come up again. The reflexive advocacy or rejection of any plan pits us not only against each other, but against any self-determined future for our community. We can't be engaged in shaping our community when one side insists on never doing anything, while the other wants to jump on any deal that comes along. We need to get in front of this. we need to engage the entire community to understand what, if anything, we want. Specifically, we need to bring together ideas from all kinds of shareholders regarding all parts of our property, as well as strategies that we might pursue, whether it's the outright sale of property or air rights, developing property ourselves, partnering with developers, or, importantly, doing nothing at all. We need to consider what constraints and limits we want to impose on any project we embrace. For example, we might want to limit construction to a certain height, or identify areas where we never want to see any kind of development. We also need to understand the implications of any development project. As I stated, a shortcoming of the deal we just rejected was that the implication of open space requirements was unknown at the time we cast our votes. That was untenable. Simply put, we need to be absolutely clear about the implication of any project before voting on it. We also need to understand the drivers of any decision that we embark on. Do we want a certain amount of money? Do we want as much money as we can get? Or do we want to change our community in certain ways, such as redeveloping our commercial strips to create more and better stores and possibly additional residential space? Finally, we're a community of neighbors. We need to consider how any of these projects will impact not only our co-op at large, but also the individuals who are closest to it. It seems we can't compensate individual shareholders differently from others, but we certainly should engage in conversations to understand what might be done. At this point, it's clear that we'll never revisit the proposed deal that we rejected back in June. But given all our property, buildings, and air rights, it's all but certain that we'll face such decisions again. As it stands, the next developer who pitches a plan, or the next director who wants to explore the idea of development will be applauded by half our co-op and villainized by the other half. It doesn't have to be that way. Development of our property doesn't have to be and shouldn't be subject to the inclination of developers or individual directors. I see the deal we just rejected as a clarion call, calling on us to decide what, if anything, we want to do. And ultimately, if we don't take a stand, we all lose. Let's compile and size up the opportunities and debate how we, the cooperators of Seward Park, envision our future and our community.